We are full swing ahead, Podsters. It's here. The last 3 months, 4 months of 2024, the home stretch. And today's episode, we're going to talk about how you can make sure that you are not stressing yourself out, that you are valuing your time, that you are making appropriate trade offs for where you are with how you want to live and how you want to spend your time. And this is going to be game changing because what we talk about on this episode, if you take it to heart, is really going to change how you close out the year. So let's just get to it.
Are you ready to speak up, stand out, and get your seat at the table? If so, you're in the right place. Welcome to Unmute Yourself, the podcast where you'll get real life anecdotes and actionable tools for you to step into your strengths, debunk imposter syndrome, truly know your worth, and show up like you own the room every time. I'm your host, Nancy Medoff, who did the thing and followed my passion for empowering women like you to unleash that inner spark and become who you know you are meant to be. I'm a diehard foodie with a raging Skittles habit who will not stop until women everywhere unmute themselves and truly thrive at work, at home, or wherever you may be. Let's do this.
Podsters, we're back. Happy September. It is September. And if you listened last week, you will not be surprised that September is my favorite month. I am ridiculously excited. One of my favorite things is waking up in the morning and putting on a sweatshirt with a pair of shorts. And then later in the day, it gets really hot. So today, Podsters, in New England on the Cape, the temperature varied 25 degrees from wake up to the middle of the day, 25 degrees. So you put on your shorts, you put on your sweatshirt, and then by the middle of the day, you have to take the sweatshirt off because then you're hot. I love it. It's fall. I love fall. If you're from New England and you don't love fall, let's talk because something's wrong with you, frankly. Anyway, I'm a little fired up today. Here's what we're going to talk about. This is how this goes. So if you've been here a while, you know that when I get an idea for a podcast, I write it down, I think about it, whatever. I write it down and I'm like, okay, whatever, I'll think about it. And then all of a sudden that topic keeps showing up places. Is it confirmation bias? Perhaps. Confirmation bias is when you have a belief and then your subconscious mind pulls in data, people, situations, all kinds of stuff to support that belief. So is it a coincidence? Maybe. Is it confirmation bias? Who knows? All I know is I was thinking the other day about this topic, and the topic is the true value of your time. So it's the time money conundrum, if you will. And I'm going to explain what that means in a minute. Let me get back to why I'm talking about it. So we're entering September. We're in September. It is back to the grind if that's how you live your life. And again, I suggest you can create a life that you don't need a vacation from. And it's not a grind. You're excited that you're back to fall. But there's a grind coming. We have kids back to school. We're back to school. We're back full on to work, less vacation days, shorter days if you live in a place that the sunrise and sunset changes with the seasons, the time I mean. And before you know it, we're going to be in full on holiday mode. So we're all thinking more about time. And that's what got me thinking about this time versus money situation. And then yesterday, I was talking to a friend, and I know she listens to this podcast, and she knows I'm talking about her. And very casually, she said to me, "Yeah, I said, how are you doing?" She said, I'm a little tired. I'm a little burnt out, whatever." And I said, "Okay, well, blah blah blah." And then she said, "I'm going to negotiate some more time when I negotiate my contract this year, my salary, my work contract." And I said, "Well, that's interesting. I have never had anybody tell me that without telling me that they're going to also negotiate their salary." And she thought about it a second. She goes, "Yeah, no, I don't need more money. I need more time." So a couple of things. And I just kind of smiled and laughed and we talked about it. And I said, I was just thinking about that myself. Of course, I would imagine everybody wants more money, or most people want more money. At a certain point, or where you are in your life, or the ebb and flow of this continuum that I'm going to talk about today, one becomes more important than the other. So either time is more important to you or money is more important to you. And this will vary and it will fluctuate and it will ebb and flow throughout your whole life. This person that I was speaking with, she's established in her career and her values are her values. And she's like, yeah, no. Because I said to her, why don't you negotiate your salary too? She's like, no, I don't. I want more time, not more money. And I'm like, okay, that's a sign we got to talk about time versus money. So we're getting back to reality. Here's what I want to say. Through different phases in your life, you'll either have more money or more time. Ideally, eventually you get to the point where you have plenty of both. So when I think about retirement, that's what I think about. You're comfortable. You don't have to work anymore. Somehow you have money coming in, or you had savings, or whatever the case is. So you have plenty of money. And because you're retired, you also have plenty of time. That to me is fantastic. But not everybody gets to live that way. And I know that. So to me, that's my goal. That's my goal. When I retire, I want to have time and I want to have money so that I can enjoy my retirement. I say that knowing that I come from a place of privilege that some other people don't have, many other people don't have. Some people work their whole lives until they drop. So I want to be mindful of that and recognize that. But I digress. My point is, so when you're first starting out, let's talk about when you're first starting out to kind of play this out. When I first started my business, I had more time than money. This is my business, not my career. And I'm going to get to your corporate career in a minute. When I first started my business, I had more time than money. So I valued the money more and I did what I could do to earn money and save money. The trade-off there was I had less time because I was using my time to save the money, and that's okay. I would do a lot of the administrative functions in the business myself. I did all of it. I did all the administrative stuff. I did all the contracts. I did all of my social media. I did, when I started my podcast, I did it all myself. And there's a great value in being able to do what anyone else on your team can do. And I think that's definitely the way to lead. Oftentimes, when I had a large team, I would want to know their jobs so that if anything happened to them, I would be able to step in and do it. And also because I wanted to know what they were going through and I wanted to know what was important to them. Anyway, my point is, if I lose someone, if my wonderful administrative assistant, who is a rock star, and I hope she's listening, if she were to ever say, you know what, Nancy, I'm not doing this anymore, I would have to do those tasks. So my point is, in the beginning, you have more time than money. So you spend your time trying to make the money. Then as I built my business, I got more and more gigs. I got more and more inquiries. I had more and more revenue coming in. I spent time planning, preparing, and delivering these keynotes and the projects and the programs. So I began to have less time. I had more money because there was money coming in, but I had less time. And that's the ebb and flow. And as your business ebbs and flows, you might find yourself with more time. Therefore, you're doing more and spending less on outsourcing or employees, or, maybe you pay to market something, but you have more time. So you're just going to do that yourself, whatever the case may be. Ebbs and flows. And it's a little dance that we all do. So let's talk about in your corporate career. So when I was in global sales, I was flying all over the world and I had a fantastic job. I was making great money. I traveled a lot and I loved it. The but there is that I had very, very little time because I was always on a plane, always in another city, very little time for myself. And so the precious time that I had, I wanted to save it. I wanted to use it or enjoy it and try to find more of it. So it's fascinating, Podsters. Even though people know I'm recording my podcast, they choose to unload the dishwasher as I'm loading it. So I'm back. You probably didn't even know I was gone, but I had to handle a little background sound and situation. So very little time for myself. So I needed to try to find more time and get more time. So how did I do that? I traded my money for time, such as, and I am not ashamed to say this, I'm a little maybe ashamed, but I'm really not actually. So I would have a laundry service. So I would drop my clothes off, bags of clothes, not dry cleaning, laundry, sheets, all that stuff, because I legit had no time. I was on back-to-back flights. It was nuts. And I didn't want to spend my time doing laundry. If I had 8 hours where I was home, I did not want to spend those 8 hours doing laundry. So I would outsource that laundry service. Ubers is a great example. And think about this. If you have more time than money, you'll probably walk. When I lived in Chicago, I walked a lot. And it was because I loved walking, but it was also I didn't have as much money. So if it was, if it was like a, I don't know, half a mile walk or a mile walk, I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'll save my money. I'll walk. Right. So when you think about Ubers or drivers or whatever the case may be, you're spending a lot of money because the time is more important to you. This is, if it's a short distance. Before I got married, I was traveling like a banshee, and literally it was frenetic, unsustainable, and inappropriate. Clearly, I'm still triggered by that. More on that perhaps at another podcast, but I wanted to get in shape. I wanted to eat healthy. I was getting married and I had no time. I was home for 24 hours every week, basically. So I hired somebody to make healthy dinners for me and Danny. Then, when I had more time, I could make my own dinners and I didn't need that. And this was something that, again, I could do it because the time was more important to me. A house cleaner, if you have somebody help you clean your house, you're valuing your time more than the money. And that's why oftentimes when, let's say, someone gets laid off, you'll start to pull back on those things. So you'll start to pull back. The house cleaner, if you had one, is probably one of the first to go. Manicure, well, manicure is not a good example because I don't think that's necessarily time for money. Maybe it could be for you. A lot of the things that you used to splurge on or spend on, and some people would say spend recklessly. I would not. I would say you're trading your time for your money. That starts to come back because you pull that back in because you don't have as much money and instead you have the time. TaskRabbit, all these companies, they are counting on people who are willing to trade money for time. Okay, so, let me give you another example. This is a good one. I think this is a good one. So I live in Truro, Massachusetts, and the next town over is Provincetown. And Provincetown has a lot of people, and some of the people are very, very wealthy, some are not. The people who are very, very wealthy. So let me tell you where I'm getting to this. So I was out weeding my garden, and I have a lot of garden, and it takes and we're talking like 2 days probably to really fully do it. And I was out there, and ironically, the man who helps me weed my garden was driving by. So I started talking to him. He goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm weeding my garden. I have the time. I might as well," because I did. He told me that there are some people there who, in this town next door, every week they pay someone to come and weed their garden every week. That's a lot of money. That's probably, I want to say it's probably $400 a week, maybe. I think I'm making that up. I mean, that's what I would imagine, maybe a little less. So $400 a week. Think about that. $1,600 a month. Let's times that out, guys. So that's over $10,000 a year for somebody to not only weed their garden, like this guy wanted them to pull the weeds up in their driveway. And I'm like, woo! So this guy had plenty of money. He might have had plenty of time too, but he was trading time for money. Okay. So as I mentioned, when you find yourself having more time and less money, you insource what you might have outsourced before: admin tasks, social media, home projects, laundry, dry cleaning, driving yourself versus Ubering, or walking versus any of those. Again, this was big for me when I was younger. I was living paycheck to paycheck. I wouldn't hop in a cab. I'd be like, no, I'm going to walk. And sometimes it was like, sometimes it was significant and probably not smart. And it ebbs and flows. So I want to talk about women who work in the home. And I mean women who work in the home, not work from home. Their work is managing their home, which is significant, and it's a significant time investment. And I want to talk about this borderline scandalous situation, and then I'm going to come back to when you're in business for yourself and the value of your time. Okay. So I don't know if do you remember the wife bonus scandal of 2015? So I remember at the time I heard about this and I'm like, are you actually serious? So what this I'm gonna summarize this in the world according to Nancy. So this was some women who were in New York. I believe they were living in the Hamptons or they were Hamptons people. And the women, many of whom were former, big time executives, met their husbands, married their husbands, most of them on Wall Street or hedge funds or whatever. And they chose to leave the workforce and stay home and manage the home or the homes in this case. And they negotiated wife bonuses with their husbands. And what that meant was, okay, I'm stepping out of work. I'm going to dedicate my time— and we're going to put a value on my time. So it wasn't a salary. It was, listen, you just got a massive bonus. So let's say one of these hedge fund guys got $1 million bonus. I'm just making that up. They would say, I want a quarter of that because I sacrificed my time. You got your time to then go make money. So does it not make sense that I should have some of that money? And at the time, I remember I was like, you got to be kidding me. These women are sitting around in the Hamptons and really this is what they're doing. And then I thought about it. I thought about it then and I just kind of moved on. Like they were going to make it a movie. There was a book about it. I don't think they ever did that. And by the way, there were measurements for this bonus. Like they had to meet certain criteria, okay. So we're not going to go there. Anyway, my point is, and it was very controversial. My point is this, Podsters. I was thinking about it in relation to this podcast and this topic, and I was thinking, and I'm like, well, you know what? And keep the controversy aside. With the controversy aside about, listen, it's a partnership. Yes, it is. Joint checking accounts. Forget it. Like, okay, there's all these different points of view, and those are all that I think most of those views are valid. I'm talking about the trade-off, the bonus, right? And as I was getting ready for this podcast episode, I was thinking to myself, I'm like, well, why not? I left my big corporate job where I was making a ton of money to work at home and make your life easier and make it so that you can focus on work. Why should I get some of that? I don't know. What do you think, Podsters? I'm going to put a question. If you're listening on Spotify, there's a question and answer section. I'm going to put this question in the Spotify. Tell me what you think. I don't know. I mean, at the time I thought it was absurd. Many people think it's garish. It was kind of like a pop culture thing at the time, and then it just kind of fizzled out. I think it's interesting. I just think it's interesting. There's other ways to achieve that, but again, this was a bonus. These are women executives who left corporate, came home, and that's their mindset. And I think there might be a little value to that. I don't know. Let's talk about it. Okay, so let's take a look at this time versus money and how you are valuing your time and money. If you are in business for yourself, and I learned this lesson quickly, but I had to learn it. And I actually learned it from my husband. If you are in business for yourself, all you have is your time. That's all you have. You can't get it back. You're not punching a clock. You don't get that time back. And if you are in a service business, your product is your time. So the value of your time is even more important because that's your product. So when you're looking at your pricing and when you're thinking about how to price a program or an hourly consulting rate or one of your offerings or a book or, whatever you're looking at pricing, think about your time and how much time went into that. I'm going to give you an example. There's a saying out there with consultants that you're not paying me for the hour of my work. You're paying me for the 30 years of experience that it took me to get to the point where I could be an expert on this, which is true. What I'm saying is, let's say it's a training gig, okay? It's not the hour of training. It's the time to prepare the training, to create the materials, to pull the materials together. Sometimes it can take me a week or two to pull together a worthwhile training program. And I train mostly in sales, and I was in sales for 25 years. Doesn't matter. So it's not the 4-hour workshop. It's the time that went into the workshop. It's traveling. Think about this. So I'm a public speaker. let's say I travel to Chicago, I live in Boston to do a 1 hour, let's say I'm traveling to the West Coast to do a 1 hour keynote. It happens all the time. So I get on a plane. It takes me 6 to 7 hours to get there. So that day's gone. That day's gone. Now I'm going to get to the how you could actually be working, but I'm going to get to that in a minute. The day back is gone. So now that's 2 days. The day I do it is gone. So that's kind of like 2.5 days. Okay. So that's 2.5 days that I could have been billing full price. And I'm not, because I'm doing this gig. So and I'm not going to get in the nitty gritty. Some speakers charge for travel, some don't, some charge half, some, it varies. And, we can peel the curtain back on that on another episode, because I think it's important that people understand how that works. And I always educate my clients about my preference and why it's my preference. But anyway, so it's not the 1 hour. So when I charge the thousands of dollars, multiple thousands of dollars for the 1 hour gig, it's not just the hour, it's I'm rolling everything into that. So it's my time to get there, it's my time to get back, it's my time to prepare the keynote. It's the level of customization. If it's a standard keynote and I don't have to customize it, that impacts the pricing. If they want something customized, they want me to take this out, they want me to address, this, they want me to meet with their CEO prior to make sure that, that I'm carrying through the themes. I love doing all that. It's more time, and that impacts the pricing. So your time is your currency if you're in business for yourself. Actually, your time is your currency it doesn't matter who you are. So when you're in a service business, it is all you have. So be rigorous with your time, how you protect it, and the value you place on it. So let's say you're working for someone else. This is easy to figure out. What's your salary divided by the number of weeks that you work, the number of weeks per year, number of hours in the week. Boom, there's your hourly wage. Here's what I would ask. If you're salaried, are you working 40 hours? Are you working 50 hours? How many hours are you working? Are you traveling? Are you traveling during work hours, or are you traveling on weekends? Or are you traveling at night? Are you taking a red eye to get back home in time to see your kids? Do you get that time back? How do you get that time back? Some companies consider this with their travel policies. They say, listen, if you need to be on the road for a day and a half to get to a conference and back, you take that time the following week. Some companies, they don't. They consider it, listen, that it comes with the job, or figure it out. That is something that's very important to ask when you're looking at a company and you're looking at their culture. What does it look like? Because the quickest way to burn out is to go back to back to back on trips and not take your comp time, or not take time for yourself, because there isn't time, because you traveled over a weekend while everybody else is back at work on Monday. And what you can't fall behind. Think about the value of your time. If you're not taking that time back, that's on you. I think the perfect example of this is if you are hourly and you get overtime, or you're working overtime, or time and a half, or holiday time. Think about a police officer in a detail. Oftentimes they get a lot of money. They got more money for details. They get a premium for details, probably because they're working overtime. I don't know the nuts and bolts of it, but they do. Some like to do them and some don't. So the ones who don't do the details are valuing their time more than they're valuing the money. So the younger ones, let's say, who take all the details they can get, they want to build up the money and the money and the money, and they're willing to sacrifice the time. So Podsters, why am I coming in here talking to you about this on this Labor Day week? Well, it's simple. Summer's over. The free spirit, slowness of summer is coming to an end. And we're about to hit it. I mean, we're going to hit it very soon. I think after this week, everybody's just full swing. So when you're making commitments, think about the value of your time. And this is, the ultimate value of your time. When you are pricing programs, think about the value of your time. When you are negotiating your salary, think about the value of your time. How much time are we really talking about here? When you are short on time and instead you have plenty of money, how can you get some of that time back? How can you buy some of that time back? Is it outsourcing? Is it staffing up? Is it, sometimes I have 6 or 7 people on my team. Sometimes I have 2 or 3. It really depends on what I have more of, time or money. And that will ebb and flow. So if you're working in the home, what's the value of your time? And I'm not saying it's necessarily money. Like, let's go back to those Hamptons bonus wives or the wife bonuses. What is it that will make you feel like your time is valued? Because I know there are a lot of moms and a lot of women at home who listen to this podcast. I see you. I know you're listening. This does apply to you. What is it that you want to trade for that time? And I know that sounds very clinical, but that's okay. This is a podcast about how to unmute yourself and speak up to stand out. So one could argue, seeing my children grow and prosper is all I need. That's great. What about the time you're doing things that don't speak to that? So what is the value that you place on your time? Is it having free time to yourself? Is it having quiet time? Is it, I'm not saying you walk up to whoever you live with and say, okay, well, I just made breakfast, give me $50 an hour or whatever. I'm saying, what's the value of that time? And how do you make sure that you're getting enough of that? Whatever that is to you. So Podsters, that's my message for today. I am so excited for September. I'm recording 2 guests next week. 2 guests, which are going to be locked and loaded, probably late September, early October. We have an all-star lineup coming the rest of the fall. I am ridiculously excited to savor September. I'm going to be coming back here and talking more about how we can just really continue to enjoy where we are and savor where we are. I have a really great newsletter coming up about that. If you are not already in my email community, get on that list. It's free. There's a link in the show notes. And if you haven't signed up for the Do the Thing retreat yet in Florida in November, it's 2.5 days. I want you to know that I know why you're hesitating. And I did too. And it was not until I really invested in myself, the time, the money, the headspace, the overcoming these fears. It wasn't until I actually did that and made that conscious decision that I was able to really level up and get to where I knew I wanted to be. You're not going to do it on your own. And this retreat is the perfect opportunity. 2.5 days, one-on-one coaching, group coaching, beautiful environment in Florida, 4 other powerhouse women. I mean, it's going to be off the rails. I still have a couple of spots open. Click on the application in the show notes. Let's talk. We'll just get on the phone and we'll talk about it because I want to make sure it's a good fit for you. So with that, Podsters, I give you the peace out and I will see you next week.
That's a wrap, Podsters. And before we go, I ask you, what's one thing from today's episode that you will use this week to unmute yourself? DM me, email me, send a smoke signal, whatever you need to do. Let me know what you're going to do differently. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone you know and leave a 5-star review on Apple. This helps me spread our message of empowerment to more people worldwide. Let's do this.